if you lose hope, somehow you lose the vitality that keeps life moving. You lose that courage to be, that quality that helps you go in spite of it all. That's a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. Fellow Toastmasters, Toastmaster today, good evening. Thank you. I remember when I was a child, sitting on my porch at night, I had long conversations with God. I remember asking him, was he real? I remember giving him an ultimatum. I gave him 2 weeks. I said, in 2 weeks, God, I want you to present to me a red bike. And if you present this red bike, then I know that you are real. So every day, I would go out on my porch, and I would stand in front, and I'd just peek out the window every day. One first week went by. I can't say that I really believed that things were going to happen the way I thought it was going to happen, but I decided that I was going to step out there anyway. So by the time the second week came about, I stepped out on the porch, and I looked around, and I didn't see a red bike. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I said to him, you see, I knew you weren't real. Well, as I got older, I became an adult, I thought about that, and I thought, how interesting that I had a long conversation with someone that I didn't believe that was real. But I knew that many people might look at that statement as a bold statement. At that time, I was about 8 or 9 years old. And at 8 or 9 years old, I was very inquisitive. I really wanted to have some type of understanding of who God was. I wanted to have some type of understanding about life. So I spent time in different churches. I went to synagogues. At a very early age in my life, I spent a lot of time in search of trying to find some kind of answer, some type of idea of who God was. I went to every denomination, everything. I did begin reading the Bible. And as I began reading the Bible, I believed everything that I read. And I didn't just read it or memorize it. I mean, I really believed it. I believed it. Because believing in it gave me hope. And I didn't realize at that time what hope meant. I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that I believed it. Well, I wanted to test everything in life, even when I was a kid. I wanted to do everything. And what's interesting is that as I became an adult, that didn't change at all. None of that changed. I was constantly pursuing education, ministry. I danced professionally for a while. I did choreography. I taught dance. I even personal trained. I did marketing and public relations as well. And currently, I contract with the federal government planning and preparing cleared, if you will, secret or top secret meetings of sorts. And I have a personal company that I call the Event Protege, which is a meeting and event consulting group. One of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to see that my company flourished. I wanted to believe. Even in that, I wanted to have hope. When I first sat down to write the speech, and as it was stated, my speech was called Life Lessons. And some of the things may still apply, but I changed it a bit. Because in the middle of my process of writing my speech, I was tested. I was tested financially. I was tested in every area of my life, in my business. I was tested in my work. I was tested everywhere. But as I began to write and as I began to do certain things, the one thing that happened, I began to lose hope. I lost hope in a lot of areas. And in the midst of that, I had a conversation in that chaos. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and she said to me, what does success mean to you? Now, as I stated earlier, the business that I'm in, on my job, and in my personal life, I'm a planner. So when you ask me a question like, what does success mean to me? I measure everything based off of what's beginning, and there's ultimately an end. There's a measurement for me. I don't understand not having a measurement. So I began to think about that. And when I began to think about that, the first thing I thought about was that red bike. And I said I had to be resilient in my thinking. I had to be very resilient in the midst of this chaos. And when I thought about that red bike, I thought, success was the red bike? So the red bike is success? But what was interesting about that is that, so the red bike equals success, which meant God existed. But for countless hours I spent talking to God, but that answered the question that he existed. So I thought, I couldn't lose hope in a matter like this. But what I did realize, that I've been successful many times in my life. I realized I couldn't function without hope. I learned many, many lessons, and I had great successes. And in this, I do know this, how to recognize a red bike when I see one. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters.